Alrighty, guys. Today I'm going to be making some metal boxes for my fools, my cowards, to hide in. That is to say, I'm going to be making some scab tanks for Turnip 28 for the Tragedy of Rust cult. I have learned from crafting my ancient ruins that I do best if I have some semblance of a plan before I start, so I drew up a quick mood board of various details that I want to include before I actually start cutting and gluing stuff together. And as is tradition in the miniature tank crafting community on YouTube, I am going to make this entirely out of trash that I can find in my garbage. Well, would you look at that? Someone threw out some bolt-action 28mm tanks. That's going to make this whole process a whole lot easier. Now here is the fun part of using clippers to get pieces off the sprue. You can also do some home surgery. If you notice you have any skin tags or warts or anything, you can just pop it off with your clippers. Safety first. Make sure you got some 99% isopropyl to use as an antiseptic. Then blast your clippers with a lighter to sterilize them. Press down deep to get to the root. Take a breath. Don't think, just go and bandage it up and wonder if it was worth using 25 cents worth of true blood for this gag. So I could talk about how I super glued a piece of foam to a piece of plastic, then glued coffee sticks and glued on some 3D printed bits, but you guys already know how all of that works, so I'm gonna skip that and just go on an entirely unrelated rant. So I was at a party recently, and I enjoy parties, but I don't engage with them the way a normal human is generally supposed to. I'm very much so not the Jim Carrey mask walking up to groups of people and saying, "Somebody stop me," and then just hop into whatever they are talking about. I am a lurker. I like looming over conversations and eavesdropping and listening to what my friends have to say when they are under the spell of in vino veritas, and judging them for whatever it is that they have to say. Which I get is not great social etiquette, but someone has got to be the scout. Take a report and analyze that gathered intelligence. Anyway, the most notable moment for me was when a conversation about Taylor Swift started, and a girl raised her voice and I heard from across the room her say, "I hate billionaires," without a hint of irony. And in that moment, the entirety of the Deserters dialogue played through my head. And I just instantly started psychologically projecting, "You don't hate billionaires, you could never kill one, you would never even slap one, you are not a communist, you are a liberast." Which, I want to make it clear, I am not the person to pick up a gun anytime soon. I have a theoretical distaste for the concept of billionaires, but I'm not sharpening any guillotines anytime soon. I'm just gonna sit at home playing Disco Elysium again. Which is all to say, the deserter, he really do be me for real. I'm just like him, bitter and cynical, watching the world from another planet, foaming at the mouth from the fact that other people have the audacity to live life and believe in stuff. Ugh. In conclusion, personal politics is a coping mechanism, but ideology scares me. I am the champion leftist infighter. I don't get it. All I do is cry about how everyone else is a fake communist, and all of a sudden, no one likes talking to me at parties. It truly is the first ever contradiction that Hegelian dialectic is incapable of solving. And actually, I figured out how to tie this back into the video. This rant has been a metaphor for the Tiananmen Square. Boom! On to my next point. Remember that time in my last crafting video where I said I learned my lesson about forgetting to charge my phone and losing a bunch of footage? Well, I am a miserable pile of lies who is doomed to repeat my mistakes for eternity. The only difference is this time I let my phone die multiple times and lost many hours of footage. But let's just imagine Joe happy and get on with the tanks. No, but actually I realized, it turns out I don't need 14 hours of footage of me gluing random crap to tanks. I found out that if you actually try to speed that up to make a time lapse, you have to increase the speed by 78,000%, and when you do that, the footage becomes pretty unwatchable. Now, when it comes to my process here, I don't really have a ton of meaningful insight about the mechanics of what I'm doing here. I'm mostly just making a bunch of mistakes as I try to emulate YouTubers who are a whole lot better at doing this than me. So I'm more so just gonna try to describe the broad motivations behind my choices. For instance, in the game, it is possible for 12 dudes with muskets to have a reasonable chance at disabling one of these things, so I want to design these in such a way that that seems reasonably possible. So I'm making the tracks very exposed here so that sticks can be jammed into them. I'm making the exhaust accessible so that potatoes can be jammed into them, and plenty of soft organic bits that can have bayonets jammed into them. Okay, what next? How about my thoughts on the rules of the Scab Tanks? Now, I've never seen them used by anyone in any battle reports, nor have I read anything about anyone using them on the subreddit, but my immediate assessment is that I think they are going to be pretty OP. They are effectively stump guns, aka cannons, except they can move, they don't produce smoke tokens, they're better in melee, and they pass all vulnerability rolls until they have 3 panic. Which means they are probably going to stick around until they get a really unlucky, unstable icon roll. Also, you can replace your Toph with a second tank, and your Toph is usually a pretty pathetic unit. It does kinda hurt that you can't give orders with him anymore, but losing him I don't think is a super big deal, and effectively having +1 unit in your army, who happens to be one of the best units in the game, seems super good. It is true though that you don't get the range or the preliminary bombardment of the stump guns, but those seem pretty compared to the upside of the tanks. But even if the tanks do end up being super OP, I really don't mind it, because I kind of thought that Turnip is kind of missing a handicap army anyway. Before Knights of Shellwood. Like in Blood Bowl, you have the Halfling team. So when you want to teach a new player the game, you can play the Halflings, you can still try really hard and use all your advanced strategic art of war knowledge, but still have a really close game that's good and fun for both players. And I think the Tragedy of Rest can kind of fill that niche, because now when I try to get a new player into the game, I can just have them play the OP tank cult, and that can kind of be my handicap. And this might even come across as a bit more natural than the Blood Bowl Halfling solution, because now I can show all my cults to a new person and let them choose first, and there's no way they're going to see the tanks as an option and then decide not to pick them. This does become a problem if they are introduced in any tournament capacity, so I guess that's the argument for the Halfling Dan Hibiki approach, so that a tournament legal handicap option can still exist. But if you do that the other way around, then every single tryhard will just always pick the OP cult. But who knows? I never even played him before. Maybe the tanks won't even end up being that good. But I have a feeling they're going to end up being that good. Finally, for the first time in my life, I truly understand the pain and torment that those YouTube crafters suffer through every day. The scourge of Jesus, the ribbons of flesh torn from his back, the exhaustion. I cannot hold myself up on this cross anymore. The weight of my body pulling down on these open wounds. The nails, they dig into the raw flesh of my hands. That 300-pound cross, those brave crafters, such as myself, drag 2,000 feet with every project we make. For I have finally experienced that furnace of Nebuchadnezzar that was heated 7 times. I have lived through the hell on earth, that is, placing rivets. Speaking of which, I was hoping to find some World War I tanks, because they were mostly held together with rivets, and then by WW2, they figured out how to just weld stuff together and how much better welding stuff together was, so they didn't really use as many rivets. But these bolt-action tanks, they were the perfect scale, and I couldn't find any available, affordable World War I model tanks in this scale, but if anyone knows where to get those, I'd probably recommend trying to use those instead. Speaking of Jesus Christ, this is taking a long time, and we got a whole second one to make. Let's get this show on the road! Jeffrey, break out Lucille. And in this instance, Lucille is editing and Giles' theme, go! Wait! We interrupt this montage to bring you some breaking news. Now, if I was Omar from The Wire and lived by the whole "a man got to have a code" motto, my code would be that subassembly is the most morally and ethically reprehensible crime against art that a degenerate can possibly commit. But for the sake of these tanks that I'm making for you, I made these for you! I have decided to break my code and finally engage in that disgusting, humiliating act that is subassembly. I don't know if I'm ever going to recover from this. Anyway, back to the Taj. We are officially in the thick of the second tank now. That first tank I kept mostly regular tank style, except for the Mr. Rossetti look that you'll see at some point that it has, but I wanted to go in a noticeably different silhouette direction with this second tank. So I took some inspiration from half tracks for the locomotion aspect of the tank, but I also threw in a plow on the front, which would actually prevent the front wheels from turning, and the whole point of the half track is that it has better steering than a regular tank. So for this guy, it basically has just become a built-in weakness. And for the whole of this tank, I'm going for more of a Roland Fortress type of vibe, Mortal Engine style. So we got like a Mordheim style shingled roof going on, and for the main gun of the tank, we've got a smooth bore tube type situation. I think in the killing people industry, they would call this type of tank a self-propelled mortar. I also want to name these tanks. For one of them, I wanted to do a play on Marengo, like the name of Napoleon's horse, also Napoleon's favorite chicken dish, also the name of a battle, and also the name of a town. So I was thinking like maybe Marennes Escargot, but it's just too clunky. For the second tank, I was thinking something with Bellerophon, who's this cool guy who had this cool horse. So maybe like Bellerophony? Again, just too many syllables. But if anyone's got any good ideas, please shoot them my way. Alright, this tank needs just a little bit of lore. So the rule that actually lets you replace your TOF with a scab tank is called a metal tomb. And it's supposed to reflect that you are literally welding your TOF inside the tank. So in order to be lore accurate, I have modeled a quick TOF to throw inside of this tank. So call me Gendo because I need you to get in the fucking scab tank, snobby.
Even when I'm not alive anymore, I guess I'll still do my job if I have to.
Now, what does this imply about who this TOF's mother is? I do not know. I'm gonna have to leave that one up to the real lore masters to answer. Alright, we are nearly done crafting the second tank, and I think I've got time for one more quick rant. There is this guy on YouTube called the Etymology Nerd, and watching through his oeuvre of YouTube shorts has sincerely been one of the most enlightening experiences I have been through in the past year or two. But the one thing I believed before watching him and believe even more strongly after watching him is that the English language so desperately needs to get on the phonetic spelling train. Not to say there are no upsides to the whole silent letter thing, like spelling bees wouldn't exist anymore, but the amount of downsides to all this nonsense spelling stuff is crazy. Now, to tie this bit back into the video, I was gonna look up the origin of the word tank and do a whole etymology thing, but it turns out that it is so mundanely uninteresting that it's not even worth including. Well, 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 just look at these guys. Imagine if Napoleon had 2 of these things at Waterloo. He wouldn't be remembered as a short fella. We would all think he was a Fort Shella. Am I right? Thank you, thanks. Yeah, I'll be here all week. Done at last. Thank God Almighty, we are ready for paint at last. So for the primer, I have decided to go with brown because brown is symbolic of nature and dependability, stability, and practicality, which I think is going to be very suiting for these tanks in the world of the root. Next, I am slathering on an orange wash to impart a rusty effect. Now, this orange wash, after 24 hours, still had not dried and was still tacky. And I think I have finally found the culprit that has been responsible for making the paint not dry correctly on my turnip projects. The same scumbag that prevented the paint on my base rims in that last turnip video from adhering. This Vallejo fluorescent orange. I've been adding it to all my brown mixes to increase the vibrancy of the color, but I guess you're not supposed to do that. You're only supposed to use it for its intended purpose, which I guess is out of an airbrush to, over white to tint an OSL effect. How I feel right now must be exactly what the Radium girls felt like when they found out that they had super cancer after a lifetime of making cool glowing paint that they were told was totally okay. I guess this is why people do test pieces before painting their entire project, and those people are cowards. They are too scared to engage in real-time problem solving. Next, I quickly speed painted up my sub-assembled Gargoylean Marginalia. Then, before this next step, I thinned down a bit of ultra matte varnish and made sure to cover all the tanks with that so that hopefully I can paint on top of these sticky pools of orange without any problems. And with that out of the way, I dry brushed, overbrushed a silvery gunmetal over everything that would end up being metallic. I have decided that for the color scheme, I would go with yellow and red, as a reference to the coolest characters in all of media, the red and yellow M&Ms. My favorite piece of M&M lore is that the red one canonically supported the October Revolution and the execution of the Romanov family. Look it up, not a joke. But anyway, yep, I'm painting up all the armor plates using the patented scratch bashing technique of just don't paint the edges. We paint the base coat covering each part, and soon the finer details will take start. Ugh, sorry about that. My early onset prosody is starting to act up these days. I did not like how obviously this was just a seashell glued to the side of this tank, so I cut a hole in it and made it into a sponson. And of course, I included a bayonet so it can stab any interloping fodder that would dare sully the presence of this here fine machine. You right born to plow on your tank, which is supposed to be a weapon made to kill people? What's that supposed to be? Some kind of sick joke? I think I was trying to suggest something about the duality of man, sir. Being the mud world that Turnip 28 takes place in, I figure these tanks probably get stuck with every 15 feet they traverse, so I imagine they would always keep some logs on hand that they can put under their treads for traction. And I'm free! Free-handing some banners! Yellow Tank has got a book open to the aiming chapter in case he forgets how the Rudy Tooty point and shooty works. Of course, as soon as I invest in a 50-gallon drum of odorless mineral spirits, oil washes are now a thing of the past. They're only for noobs and grandpas. Now every real painter who wants to be taken seriously only uses noosh. Which, like, oh, it's water dissolvable, no toxic fumes, doesn't give you cancer. Alright, I get it, it's better, but couldn't you guys have told me this, like, 2 days before I invested my life savings into a bunch of oil crap? Don't you guys think about anyone other than yourselves? At the very least, you guys could have waited until I used up all this oil nonsense I bought before getting into this noosh stuff. Next, we have to do some landscaping in the Garden of the Yellow Tank. And last, but most certainly not least, we need to make sure those treads are coated in a thick layer of goopy mud. Wow, wow, wow. Do I love these guys so much. These tanks might be my favorite thing I have ever crafted in my entire crafting career. They might be the most fun I've had making miniatures since I was but a wee lad, and I was just absolutely ruining a box of Assault on Blackreach as I just crudely glued orc heads onto Terminator bodies. And I cannot wait until I get a chance to actually break these guys out in a game. And I've got a little bit of a postscriptum note to end on. I think I've truly pushed Premiere to its limits with the editing of this video. I think I might have just had too many hours of too much 4K footage. Turns out Premiere really starts to struggle if you put 500 gigabytes of 4K footage into the timeline, which I swear to God is not an exaggeration. That is the actual amount of final space that all the footage for all the video files I recorded for this project. And by the time I got to the 10-minute mark of editing this video, my PC became an overworked, starving mule. I had to start stabbing it in the hindquarters with a knife just to get it to cross the finish line. And each one change or one moving of any clip in the timeline just caused the whole program to freeze for like 10 minutes, which truly has made this video making an exercise in thoroughly mastering Zen-like Buddhist patience. And also, the preview just stopped being able to play at least half the time, and when it did work, I had to lower the resolution to the point where I could count the number of pixels, which was like 144, by the way. So I got to the point where I just had to start editing based off of vibes. So like, yeah, after that 10-minute mark, it became a real pain to actually see the outcome of what I was editing. And I just kind of have to hope that everything came out the way that I wanted it to. And ideally, I would like to be able to just brute force my way through this problem by upgrading my PC instead of having to learn how to format video files and compress your media encoders or any of that nerd shit. So if you want to help me make my dream come true of not having to learn how to do proper editing techniques or whatever, and if you're also feeling generous, I have made a Ko-Fi. You can send me some of your internet money. You won't even notice it's gone anyway, because internet money is fake. It doesn't even count as real money anyway. But Guys, seriously, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Farewell!